I gotta blow up the other one.
We're gonna get rocked. Oh, Bossman's gonna knock me out.
Dude.
Where do you put your hand? Well, these are not the boppets that I was talking about. Those ones you can actually get a good hit on someone. Too?
Okay, yo, not in here, not in here. There's too many valuable things.
I'm making sure I got leverage.
Okay, so what's going on? You said if you got these that you would beat Josiah.
No, I just said I would love to deck Bossman with a boxing glove.
And you said the same.
I wanted the boppers, but yeah, this will work.
Hey, you can't hit me in the fit. You can't kick. You got long arms. Oh, you broke it.
It already broke.
Okay, this isn't fair. Look at my arm span and look at his. Like,
Okay,
look at.
I got a broken one now.
I'm trying to block. Oh, hard.
Gotta give the decision goes to Josiah on that one, I think.
Oh. What do you have to say, dude?
It was a close battle. And this is the result. Big hole. We need the real name brand gloves next time. What's going on, guys? On this episode, we are going to talk about fluids. Fluids keep your car going and make everything work. In a car, you're going to have your oil system, which can include the engine, the transmission, and the diff. We're going to have our cooling system, which is the water that keeps the engine cool. We have our fuel system, that's what feeds everything and gives us the power we need. And all of these things require a lot of lines, a lot of thought process, and I'm going to go over those and why we did certain things a certain way in these episodes. In this one, we're just going to talk about the water system and why I did some things the way that I did them. A lot of things to consider, especially when you're moving the rad to the rear. We have to think about our airflow to the radiator. We have to think about the weight of the radiator and where we want it in relation to the car because it's a lot of weight. So we got to consider all this stuff. I'm going to show you the routing, where the lines go, how the expansion tank works. Let's get into it. So to begin the discussion of the cooling system on this Corvette, let's look at the most important piece, which is the radiator. The radiator is located in the back. The most important thing for a radiator is to get airflow so that we can transfer and do the heat exchange and cool the engine. I'm sure you all know how a radiator works, but the fins allow air to pass through. The air temperature transfers to the water. The water that was hot, that came from the engine, gets cooled by the air and goes back to the engine. So what do we need? Lots of air, because the fans that are located on the back of the rad are drawing massive amounts of CFM through the rad to cool it. So we have a rear glass that's going to be going here. Our rear glass is going to have cutouts in it. So I designed a Lexan rear window that is not installed. We're not going to install it till the very end, but it's going to fasten as if it was the factory windscreen. We're going to have a nice black border on it to make it look OEM, but it has a bunch of cutouts in it going up all the sides. That's going to allow air to be drawn in through here. We can also draw air from under the car, which is going to be, there's kind of openings and orifices everywhere in the rear. We've already tested this theory out. We already run the exact same rad setup on my S14 for the last 4 to 5 years. Our cooling system on the 240 has been tried and true, never had a failure, never had an overheating problem, and we applied what we knew from that car to this car. Okay, so I removed the rear bumper so that you guys could get a better look at what's going on here. We know that we can get air into the rad through our window and through the openings here, but we also need to be able to get air out. The bottom of the bumper actually is just right about here. So half of the rad is exposed underneath the bumper. I also made this bracket. This is going to be the license plate spot where we're going to powder coat this black. We're going to put this here, and we are actually going to sandwich some mesh between the bumper material and this bracket, and this is going to kind of allow just more airflow to escape from underneath the bumper and through the bumper. And you're going to also see a bunch of tire smoke being drawn through there just because of where the fans are blowing everything. With that, we have a D-rail dual fan shroud that seals itself to the rad, and then it pulls as much air as possible through this area. I don't know, pulls as much air as possible through it. For the water system, we run -16 AN line. Some people run -20. Personally, I feel like the volume of the water within the line is not going to increase the cooling efficiency. So a -16 line with a high volume pump is more than enough to keep your engine cool. Sometimes flowing too much water too fast actually doesn't do as efficiently of a job. So the more isn't always better. The way that this rad and water system works, we have a water pump that I'll show you after I show you this. But we have an in and an out line, -16 coming in, -16 going out at the bottom here. This is a CSF R1 rad. It has been specifically designed for drifting, and it does an excellent job at cooling my other car, this car, and many other cars that I've used this setup on. While we're back here, we also have, at the highest point on the radiator, this line goes over to our expansion tank. The expansion tank is located at the highest point in the cooling system so that we can have any air pockets or bubbles that develop inside the system are going to go always to the highest point. Air is always going to go to the highest point. Then we have a high pressure rad cap, which is a 29-pound rad cap. A normal system is around 15. This one is about double. Raising the pressure within the system increases the boiling point, so it allows you to run at higher temperatures without relieving the water and relieving the pressure. So we always run a higher cap on race cars. And then once it does overflow or relieve the pressure, it goes into an overflow. It's a fully integrated system. The water can be drawn back into the expansion tank if we're overflowing and then we need to demand that water again. The system is closed for the most part unless we really need to exhaust a ton of extra water. I've actually never had that happen on these systems. And all of that is based on the amount of expansion we're allowing and then how much overflow water we can hold. A lot of car systems I've seen kind of overcomplicate what's required, and they have swirl pots and they have different ways to make the flow better and to get air pockets out of the system. Personally, the way that I've done our steam port setup on the engine, which I'll have to explain when we go to the front, I've never had an air pocket issue. The most important thing to me is the location of the pump being at the lowest point so that your engine and your rad both drain into the pump, making sure that there's constant water within there and it's not going to get an air pocket within the pump. Because if you get air in the pump, then it's not going to push any volume. The way that these pumps work, they're not an interference pump. They don't create pressure. They just move volumes of water based on the water's viscosity, being more than air. So I'll show you that next, where the pump is and how these lines get there right now. Okay, so underneath where the factory passenger fuel tank used to be, I've used this compartment to hold a bunch of stuff. Makes the center of gravity really nice and low, and it's a very well protected pocket. So here we have our 55 gallon per minute Mazir water pump. This is the same one that I use on the S14. We sell it on our website. And this is where you're gonna see the water going in and the water going out through the compartment of the car. It's really integrated well to be mounted kind of in a position where we have a nice fixed fitting here, and then we have a line going in, and then this one is going to be coming from the engine, bypassing the pump and going right to the rad. Okay, into the passenger side. What would be underneath the passenger seat, we have the two water lines coming from the water pump. This is a really simple setup. These two lines go into bulkheads in the firewall, and you know what? It might actually be a nice thing that the engine's not in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see it. So over to the front. In the front, we're missing the engine, of course, but our dry sump tank kind of covers where the bulkheads come through. You can see that these are the two fittings coming through the firewall, and these are the two water lines. The two water lines go up into here where they connect to our 417 LS based water manifold. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So there's two water lines that you saw connect to our two ports here. These ports line up with the block itself, And then these two fittings go to our steam port lines, which connect from the back of the heads and the front of the heads, joining them all together and then going into the highest points of the water manifold. The way that I've always bled the system is I turn on my electric water pump, I fill it with water in the rear going through the expansion tank, and until I see water coming out of the steam port lines, that's when I reconnect the steam port line, tighten it up, the system is fully bled. Once you have enough volume and pressure to push water through the heads and out of those little lines, you now know almost for sure that there is water fully in the system and the pump doesn't have any air pockets in it and it's flowing water well if you start seeing water pouring out of the steam port lines. So that's my little trick with the LS stuff. I've never had a problem since. I've always been able to manage temps really well, and that is the coolant system on this Corvette, which is also identical to the coolant system on my S14. Thanks for watching this video on our coolant system. The next two videos are going to be covering the fuel system and then the oiling system. The fuel system, we'll talk about how we kept the stock fuel tank and how we made it work with the Nuke Performance surge tank. And then in the oiling system, it's a dry sump. It's got lots of cool lines, lots of different things. And we'll show you how it all works on the next episode. The oil and dry sump system will probably be after the engine comes back in. The fuel system I should be able to cover fully without it.